Programming in C# and ASP.NET. This is Mr. Wilson, your instructor and guide as we take a closer look at programming in C# and ASP.NET. This is CS ASP 007, Basic Math in C#. So, what are we going to talk about here? Well, we're going to be talking about just some basic math. We've already talked about numbers. We've talked about doubles and ints, and we did that in the last video in CSASP 006. And so in this one, we're actually going to talk about math and some of the things. Number one, rules of assignment, how we assign things in C#. But also we're going to talk about types of operations that we can do. And most of the time people think of basic mathematics that we will use, and that's true. But there's also some other things that we can do in computer programming that we can't necessarily do in normal math that you would see maybe in one of your classrooms. So an example of assignments is int, okay? And let's say if we set up ints as number of minutes or count or min int value, then down below you can see we have set up number of minutes equals 45 and our semicolon at the end. And so that would put the number 45 in our variable called number of minutes. And if we had a variable called count, count equals 0. So notice we can use that equal sign, and whatever follows in that equal sign will then be inside of our variable when we call it up. Min int value equals, and notice we used a negative, negative 21, 4, 7, 4, 8, 3, 6, 48. And so we've basically put values into those separate variables of ints that we have there. Another example of assignments. Assignments are used to change the value of variables, okay? So assignment operators equals mainly is to make the variable equal to whatever follows it, whatever number, or if it was another variable that had a number inside of it, it would also make it equal that way. Expressions can be another variable, just as I just said. It could be a compatible literal value, just a number, in other words, what they're trying to say. You know, like we just saw 45, or we just saw 0, a literal value. It could be a mathematical equation, and you have to do the math to figure out exactly what the number is that we're putting in that variable. We do that all the time in programming. We do it all the time, adding a number, subtracting a number, taking it times a number, divided by a number, coming up with the remainder of a division problem, something like that, okay? It could be a call to a method. We're not going to talk a lot about methods right now, but just kind of keep it in your mind that we can use several different ways to put a number inside of there. And we could do a combination of those things in how we do that, okay? So, for example, here is decimal amount owed, and then deficit value. So amount owed equals 3,000.50, and notice there's an M at the end of that number. You go, well, wait a minute, Mr. Wilson, an M isn't a number. But in this case, M stands for money. So this is a formatting thing to say, hey, this is actually a money. And so, of course, only 2 decimal places there. Any other decimal places would just be knocked off the end. And so you can see deficit value below there. And it's a negative number, but still it has the M at the end, and so it denotes it as money. Okay? Something good to remember because we're always dealing with money. Here's another example of an assignment. Count So if you look down there, new value or int count equals 0. New value equals 25. So count is 0. New value is 25. If count equals new value, both count and new value now equal 25. I think this is pretty easy to kind of understand this whole assignment way of doing this. But in this case, we're using a value or a variable and putting the value of that variable into another variable. Okay, so here are the different types of arithmetic operations that we could do. Of course, addition you're familiar with, a minus sign for subtraction. Multiplication is different in computer programming. It is not an X. It is a star. It is a star, okay? And so that denotes it because we're going to use that letter that is X a lot in doing other things. So we can't have it as a symbol for multiplication. So the star is. A slash is for division, and that probably makes sense. And then notice percentage is on there. And percentage is called modulus, and it's an arithmetic application. And modulus means that we are going to divide, we're actually going to divide, and whatever the remainder is, that is going to be what our modulus is going to be. So in that case, that's a way of mathematics for us to get the remainder of a division operation. Simplest form of an assignment statement: result variable equals operandi 1 versus operator operandi 2. So it's just you could use a mathematical equation in there to do that. We always want a space before and after the operator. So if we use a addition or subtraction, we're going to put a space in between the numbers and then the operators, just for easier ability to read. The computer doesn't really care, but it is easier to read that way. Okay. So, for example, if we're talking about modulus, here's a result from a modulus operation. If you see, it says result equals 67 modulus. That's not percentage, but modulus 3. And in that mathematical situation, if you take 3 and divide it into 67, the answer would be 22. But what's remainder is 1. So that would be the result of asking this question. What would go in result would be the number 1. Hopefully that makes sense to what you're looking at. And then they show some examples over here of 3 modulus 5 would be negative 3. 5 modulus negative 3 would be 2. Negative 5 modulus negative 3 would be negative 3. So kind of an interesting look at some mathematical operations there. Okay. Some other basic arithmetic operations. Plus with a string identifier. Oh, if you remember right, in some of what we were doing, we were adding strings together, and that is a mathematical operation. So if we look down here, string result, string full name, string first name equals Rochelle, and string last name equals Howard. And then down here it says full name equals first name, which would be Rochelle, plus, and then a space, plus last name, which would be Howard. It would put all of that together into, to say Rochelle space Howard. Okay, so that would be the full name. That would be this operation, how this operation would turn out. Okay, so here once again, first name is Rochelle, last name is Howard. Full name, because of this operation down here, full name equals first name plus blank space plus last name. This is what would be inside of full name in the memory, Rochelle Howard. And notice there would be a space in there. And that's what our string would do. And that is called concatenation. Concatenation. And we do it all the time. All the time. It's a very common thing for us to do in programming. So here's some other things that are very common for us to do. This is what would be called increment or decrement. Increment or decrement. And so one of the things we will add is a plus plus. So here it says num plus plus. That would be whatever num was plus 1. And it would add 1 to that continually. So if num was, down here at the bottom you can see, if num was 100, and then into our label.text, it would equal num plus plus. And so it would actually show us 100 in our label. Minus num would mean it's going to take 1 away from that. So that kind of makes sense. Now, if you put the plus plus at the beginning, it happens before whatever the operation is. So if that was to print that to a text label and the plus plus was in front of it, it would add that number, that 1, to it before it was printed to the label. If you put it on the back side of that, so here it is in front, here it is in back. If you put it in back of, then it would do it after it was sent to the label. So that's why this says it would display 100 because it was done afterwards. Now it's 101. So num by itself sent there would say 101. But if you put it in front of there, display would then equal 102. That might be a little confusing, but as we work with it, I think you'll see how that works out, okay? Once again, these are those data types that we looked at, the different kinds of values that go with the different types of data. And you can see that based upon what bit size they are is the amount of information that they can actually hold onto the inside of there. Okay. All right, so let's go to Visual Studios. Let's do a little bit of programming and try this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and open Visual Studios. And of course, we're working in Visual Studios Community Version 2019. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click Create a New Project. And once again, we're just going to be kind of playing with a WPF application. So I'm going to say Next. And I'm going to call this, so let's get used to this idea of, from now on, let's call this CS and underscore ASP and then underscore and 007. Okay? That way we'll know which lesson it is that we did this project with. Okay? So let's go ahead and click Create. And this is our basic math project that we're working with. And all right, there it is. And it's going to go ahead and load the designer. There it is. And I'm going to pull this down. Once again, I'm going to close this over here. We don't need to see all that. And I'm going to blow this up to about 150. And, you know, we've got our solution over here. And there we go. And we're working in our main window right here. Okay? And we're in the designer. We're not in the XAML, because we could go over here to the XAML and we could see that, which is right down here. But right now we're in our designer. Okay. So we want to, I'm thinking we want to kind of work on these math things a little bit. So let's go ahead and let's grab a couple of text. Do I want some text boxes? Let's not. Let's just, yeah, let's grab some text boxes. Let's grab a text box, and we're going to drop that over here. And I'm going to come get another one. I'm going to drop that here. Well, maybe line those up. There's 2 text boxes right there. And I'm going to grab a label, and I'm going to put it just right over here for now. Okay. And I'm going to come to this first text box that we have, text box, and I'm just going to put 1 behind that. So it says text box 1 right now. And I'm going to come into where it says text, what it says in there, and I'm going to say number and 1. Okay, and that way we'll know what we're putting in there. I'm going to come down to this text box, and I'm going to put number 2. And then also make sure that you name this text box 2. Okay? That'll make them easy to find that way. We've, oh, this one should be 1. There we go. So there we go. And this one is 2. Okay. So now we have text box. Okay, well, I'm not real sure why those keep switching back and forth on me. That's kind of funny. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this box and I'm going to put it right down here. And now we've got text box 2 and text box number there. I'm just going to change that to a 1, and I'm going to change that one to a 2. I think I kept flipping those numbers. All right, I've got my label right here, and I'm going to go grab a button, okay? And I'm going to just drop that button in there, just like that. Okay, and this label is just called label. It has no fancy name or anything like that. And so now we're ready to kind of do something with this. So let's leave that button, and in fact, let's go in this button and let's say addition. We're going to put the word addition on the inside of there, okay? And then we're going to double click it. Okay. Now, if you remember correctly, let's see. We need to do a couple things here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to create a couple doubles. Let's go double, sorry, all lowercase. Double, just like that. And one of the ways we can do variables, initialize variables, and I really haven't done this too much for us yet, but let's do it now. And let's call our first variable number 1, and then comma number 2, and comma and total. Okay, so we've named 3 variables there right in that one line, just like that. Okay, and now we're going to take, and I'm going to say total, and I'm going to say equals, and then I'm going to say number, and there it is, number 1, space, put in a plus sign, and number, lowercase, number 2. Now notice it says, hey, it put this little red squiggly line under here. And the reason why it did that is it says, you know, there's nothing in here. So these are null. In other words, they're not 0. There's nothing in here right now. They're what's called null, which means they don't have anything on the inside of it. So one of the things we want to do when we create numbers is we want to put something in there. So we're going to say inside here, we're going to say equals 0. And then we're going to come here and we're going to say equals 0. And let's go ahead and tell total that same thing, equals 0. All right. So now our numbers, each one has 0 in it. And look, those little red squiggly lines went away when we did that. And so now we can go in here and we can put a colon at the end of that, a semicolon. And now come down here and I can say label. And we just called it label dot. And we want content. And now we're going to say equals, and we're going to say total. There it is. And semicolon. Okay, so now we've done that. Okay, and so now that we've built this, one of the things we're missing, of course, is to come in here, and we're going to say number 1. And if you remember right, there's a way that we go to our equals, and then here we're going to put text box 1 dot text, but we can't do that because this is not a number, so we have to switch it into a number. And the way we do that is convert dot, and we want to make that a convert to double. And then we just put these, goes inside of parentheses. Just like that, goes inside of parentheses and semicolon. There we go. Now that will take whatever's in that box, the number that I put in there, and put it into number. Okay, so we come in here and we put number and 2 and equals and convert and dot, and once again to double, and parentheses, open parentheses, and we go text box 2 dot text and semicolon. Okay, so now whatever number's in here is going to be put into here, and whatever number is in here in number 1 or in text box 1 will be put into number 1. So if we've done all that, we go ahead and hit save, okay? And then we come up here and let's run our project. Okay, and so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put 75. And then I'm going to put 25, 25. And I hit the addition and it says, hey, that would be 125. Okay, that's what we wanted it to be able to do. But let's go back over here. Let's say, for example, we wanted it to be able to do some other mathematics. So let's put another button down here. Let's put this button in here. Just like that. And let's double click this button. Oh, let's wait a minute. Let me put a name on this one. So let's say that this button is going to be called multiply. Multiply. Okay. And so you can kind of guess what we're going to do with this one. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to come over here. And I want to do kind of the same thing that I already did. Okay. And so if to do that, I need to do this. Okay, to do that, I'm going to click down in here into my button click. And, okay, in my case, I'm going to do that. And so I kind of cheated. But I want you to write all this code out, okay? Do not copy and paste and try to work through this. I want you actually to write all this code out so that will make that button do what we want. Part of programming is kind of getting that muscle memory and that thought process of typing and writing the project down. But if I did this every time, then we would be doing this for hours and hours and hours. But okay, so that's there. Go ahead and stop me and type that in, and then you'll be able to go and test your button. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and let's go back over to let's hit the save. And hit the build. There we go. And it says build all succeeded. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab another button. I'm going to drop it on here. And let's call this button subtraction. And let's get one more button. And let's call it division. Okay, so now if you clicked on that subtraction button, it would bring us back over into here, and this would be the subtraction / subtraction. And And this one would be division. And so let's see if you can go then and go ahead and finish both of these sections, creating one as the subtraction here information, and this one as the division. And then also go ahead and go back and test the multiplication. So I've done about half the project for you, and I want you to go and complete the other half of the project. Now, I don't want you to ask somebody else on this. I want you to actually do it yourself, write all the code out and work it all out, okay? And then if you really, really get stuck, I mean, you work on it for more than today and beginning tomorrow, then you can ask for help. But I want you to do it. If you remember correctly, I showed you, one of the slides I showed you, showed all of the operations that you can do with arithmetic. So you can go through and look at all of those, okay? So go ahead and build these and make them do what you are supposed to make them do, okay? And for us, as far as we're concerned, let's go ahead and let's go back and I'm just going to go ahead and finish the slides while you do that. You know, we talked about the numbers and we did some stuff. We did that math stuff, and okay, now that we're back here in the slides, let's go ahead. We, of course, we looked at some basic math. We, we use doubles mainly is what we used. But we looked at rules of assignment, and we also talked about the type of operations that we could do. And then we did that little project. All kind of an interesting way to kind of expand our use of numbers in what we're doing. Our next video is CS ASP 008, our first challenge video. So it won't be too hard. I'll take it easy on you this first one, but I'm going to ask you to do a few things with that. So I will see you there. Make sure to subscribe. More to come.